Hey everyone, since my video on Fixa Abandac seemed pretty popular, I figured I'd think of something else which kinda poses a problem in NGS with its current balancing. Similarly to the last video, this is something that pretty much only affects the speedrunning and time attack scene for NGS, so if you're a casual player and just want to listen to it, that's perfectly fine too. When considering what I could make a video on, I was conveniently trying to solo red and purples when I decided I'd check for runs with the same class I'm playing right now, which is Bouncer. One of the first solo clears I saw was using something which I definitely got a bit upset by, and that was the use of two Flugelguard weapons, a Fixa Unwix 5 and a Fixa abandac 5 Flugel weapon. With that, I decided to make a video on sub-weapon usage in NGS and how it affects the higher end of NGS's meta. We'll also be talking about sub-weapon usage in base PSO2 to compare the two. For those that don't know what sub-weapons are, they are basically just weapons you use to fulfill certain niches for specific moments. It's not a weapon you use mainly, as that's what's just called a main weapon. In the past, with base PSO2 sub-weapons, you could basically split them into a few categories which have pretty nice uses here and there. A few of these uses basically were PP batteries, like the Orbit, Mirage, and Nova series, which basically offered natural PP recovery when your weapon was sheathed. You also had the Get In series, which offered more immediate PP recovery in exchange for losing your HP. Basically, you had the option between choosing a natural PP recovery weapon, which would speed up your natural PP recovery usage when you were moving from point A to point B, or you could use the Get In weapon, which would quickly refill your own PP. You also had rainbow builds, which were commonly used more towards bossing, where you would have several weapons of various elements so you could hit elemental weaknesses of bosses, as you'd gain the elemental damage bonus. You also had more niche weapons like the status inflicting weapons. The snow weapon series was pretty popular as it had increased chances of inflicting status ailments on enemies, while the Lumigani 15-star gunblade had an extremely high chance of applying status. This got mostly used against the falls bosses like Elder and Luthor, as they would become stunned for a long time if you inflicted them with the right status. Finally, you had weapons which had PAs built into them. Two good examples are the Lambda Bigelow V2 and its ability to allow Pierce Shot regardless of which class, which saw use in Endless Quest for Dark Falls Luthor, and the Japanese server exclusive Helen Bafina, which allowed for the use of Movement PA Asagiri Rendon, which saw massive use in time attacks and Endless Quest due to its traveling speed. To sum things up, sub-weapons in base PSO2 covered a variety of niches. However, sub-weapon uses in NGS changed things quite a bit with the introduction of the newer fixas, which were introduced in the October update, specifically Fixa Unwix and Fixa Blastor. For those that don't know or didn't watch my last video on Fixa Abandac, Fixa Unwix has an always active 2% potency increase and at max level, you'll deal 15% more damage if you're not hitting a weak point. Previously, I mentioned that this is mostly useless in group content, and it is due to weak bullet. However, in solo content such as Purple Triggers or various ARCS records, there are quite a few bosses and generic mobs where you are not hitting any weak points at all. A prime example of this is Purple Retum's Calclundo, which has absolutely zero weak points. This leads to getting 17% more damage over other players, assuming the Fixa is maxed out. Throw this in with Fixa Blastor, which provides 4.75% potency unconditionally, but have 15% more photon blast damage, and you've got an extremely deadly photon blast too. This basically means most players that are using sub-weapons at the high end have roughly around 12 to 17% more damage on average over the average player who isn't using these fixas, assuming you also have these fixas. There's also 15% more photon blast damage thanks to Fixa Blaster. This creates a situation where these players will have a massive advantage over you unless you can also get similar fixas as them, but this also subsequently ramps up the prices of gearing massively, which makes it overall not worth the price tag for many. Balance-wise, this makes the time attack and speedrunning scene a bit unfair when you consider players with big enough wallets will likely have these fixes to try and get the fastest time, leaving you in the dust because you can't afford that kind of gear. This makes competing with them for faster times somewhat futile, in my opinion. This kinda creates a toxic speedrunning environment where the gap between players is massive, and in a way, makes it so having fixas is mandatory rather than optional due to the impact of sub-weapon fixa. Also, I would like to just mention right now, the players themselves are not toxic, please don't hurt me guys. It's the fixas that are the problem. Unfortunately, there's no clear way for this to be fixed unless the other fixa like Termina, Fatale, and Attack become more impactful. Sega kinda backed themselves into a corner with these fixas. Unless they see nerfs, I see this being a continued issue going forward. It's nice that sub-weapons are coming back in some form, but I'd much rather prefer how sub-weapons existed in base PSO2 where they didn't make that big of an impact damage-wise like they do in NGS. With that being said, that's basically the current meta when it comes to time attacks and speedrunning. I can't say I necessarily enjoy it, but it's likely here to stay anyways, and the only thing speedrunners like myself can do is try our best. Let me know what you guys think of subweapon usage in NGS in the comments below. That'll be the end of this video, see you guys next time.